April, police officers raided hundreds of barber shops and vape shops up and down the country as part of a crackdown on suspected money laundering by the National Crime Agency. Now, the following day, my LBC colleague Nick Ferrari got some reaction to those raids from the Reform UK leader Nigel Farage.
Any market town in the country, you'll find half a dozen barber shops. You know the drill. You go in, no customers, cash only, Lamborghini out the back. And it's been going on for years. And I've been banging on Nick about it forever on social media and talking there to LBC's Henry Riley. And I've just been astonished that the police have done nothing. And we know, of course, they're not Turkish anyway. They're Iraqi or Iranian or Kurdish. In fact, there's probably half a dozen crossing the channel right now that'll be in one of the shops next week. So, ram full of illegals, all involved with drugs, mostly drugs. There are other crime elements too, but it's mostly drugs as the use of Class A proliferates across the country. But it's not just barbershops. You've also got Turkish restaurants. Have you seen some of those out there? Oh, they're mega, they are. You go in there, cash only. There's nothing on the menu. I mean, don't worry about that. And then they put their returns in. So this has been going on an industrial scale.
What is the reality? This is all money laundering, would you say, Mr. Farage? What is actually going on here?
Oh, it's money laundering. It's money laundering. Of course it is. Yes, it's a way of funneling large amounts of cash through, declaring some of it to the taxman. And that's what the racket is. And of course, the cash, the drugs trade is all cash.
Now, today, a government minister, Miatta Fahnbulleh, the Devolution, Faith and Communities Minister, she has said that attitudes such as that you heard in that conversation there are tantamount to racism. I don't know what planet she's living on, because it's nothing to do with racism. It is calling out things which are clearly wrong. Now, I don't know about you, but where you live, have you experienced this, where you see all these barber shops suddenly springing up? Very rarely is anybody in them. I mean, I've got one near me. Well, I better be careful because I better not identify it. But in 15 years, it sprang up as a sort of kebab shop, and there's now a sort of hairdressers next to it. I've never seen in 15 years a single person in either of them. And yet they're still there. Now, any normal business, if it didn't have any customers, would go out of business. And I've always thought there's something odd about this. And how can it be that the numbers of these barbershops in particular have proliferated to such an extent that, I mean, either they are genuine businesses and making a huge amount of money and that's why there is a lot more of them, or there is something going on. Nail bars, we know that they have been used for modern slavery and human trafficking. And yet very little seems to have been done about it. And so I'm going to question why Miatta Fahnbulleh, this government minister, is alleging this or saying that Nigel Farage is being racist when he says this, because I genuinely don't think he is. I think he's identified a problem. It's a bit like the grooming gangs issue, isn't it? It's like 15 years ago where the police knew there was a problem, but they didn't tackle it because they were afraid that they would be accused of being racist. Well, she's playing into that with this, isn't she? 0345 6060 973 is the number to call. Well, I mean, I've got some statistics here of some raids that were carried out in November last year. Police carried out massive raids on high street businesses, including barbershops, mini-marts, vape shops, in the biggest ever crackdown of its kind on money laundering. And it's not just those. All these American sweet shops that keep sort of springing up. Does anyone really buy American sweets from them? Again, there's a load of them in London. I never see anybody in them. All these car washes that have grown up over the years. Now, people do get those car washed, but it's all cash in hand, isn't it? And there is something, I think, going on here that we haven't quite got to the bottom of. Now, a month-long operation in October last year saw 2,734 premises visited and raided, 924 arrests, more than £10.7 million seized, and £2.7 million of illegal goods destroyed. More than 450 companies have been referred to Companies House for further investigations. Now, this was from last October. So I want to know, is this happening in your community? What can you tell me about it? Or if you are operating a perfectly legal Turkish barber shop, nail bar, whatever, and you feel sort of almost insulted that these allegations are being made because you are doing the right thing, give me a call as well. Let's talk to Joseph Kotrie-Monson, Director of the National Criminal Defence Law firm Mary Monson Solicitors on London's Fleet Street, whose specialisms include defending people accused of financial crimes such as money laundering. Joseph, very good evening to you. There is something going on here, isn't there?
All the listeners, as always, there is something going on, and yeah, very interesting. Of course, I'm a criminal defence lawyer. Doesn't mean I'm going to be defending the principle of money laundering today, but I think it's very important that we make our decisions and have our opinions based on evidence. And I mean, I have to say I was fairly, let's not say disgusted, let's say disappointed by those comments of Nigel Farage when he keeps saying, you know, these type of people, you know, those types of people. That's not evidence. You don't know what's going on there. And that it's right that there has been a massive boom, for example, in barbershops. And that's probably primarily because of two reasons. And they may be empty a lot of the time, but of course, when they're empty, they're empty. And when they're busy, they're very busy, just like kebab shops. And of course, you and I both know, don't we, Ian, that a lot of those places are ones that rely on walk-in trade, and a lot of the ones are
yes, but why have I never seen a single customer in 15 years in the one near me?
Get there. So a lot of them, and in fact, some of the businesses are almost completely on the basis of delivery, doing their own deliveries, not even using the front of the shop. There are actually kebab and these types of restaurants on Deliveroo where they don't even have a location anymore because it's become so superfluous.
Yeah, but hang on, because we all know the local chip shop, that is full of customers. They're walking in all the time, all during the day, all during the evening. But a lot of these establishments are not. They never have any.
Yeah, I mean, listen, you will have your experiences. I have mine. I'll tell you this. If a business is open, HMRC, and I say this as a result of my background in HMRC tax evasion investigations, for example, they have the data. And the reason for that is that they have algorithms that enable them to detect whether a business, just on the basis of what the business is submitting, whether it's consistent and whether it looks fraudulent. Is there tax evasion? Of course there's tax evasion. And why is there tax evasion? Because these are cash businesses. And the reason
but why are they cash businesses? Because a normal hairdresser wouldn't be a cash business.
Any business that takes business on the high street is a cash business. WH Smith is a cash business.
Give me a break.
Most of the money that they're taking is based in cash. And if I was wrong, they wouldn't have a till, would they?
No, of course all businesses take cash, but don't try and pull the wool over my listeners' ears because you're talking absolute rubbish.
Well, in my 200 appearances on LBC,
hang on. I'm going to put my point to you, whether you like it or not. You can pay £29 to get a credit.
Okay,
we'll finish the interview.
If you a little bit of respect.
No, you just listen to the question and then
make a point.
No, you listen to the question and let me make my point, and then you can answer it, or we'll finish the interview right now.
I'm not pulling the wool over anyone's ears.
Let me finish my question to you.
Of course I will.
Oh, for goodness sake. £29 is what it costs to get a credit card machine. Lots of individuals get them now. So why wouldn't a business of any nature have a credit card machine in their business?
Sorry, it appears we're at cross purposes. When I say cash businesses, I'm not suggesting these people only take cash.
Well, many of them do.
Pardon?
Many of them do.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that loads of them are taking a lot of cash. And is there fraud? Is there tax evasion? Of course there is. And it relates to any owner-managed, any non-corporate, and the possibility of that happening with any small business where it's owner-managed, of course, is significant. Do I think, for example, that every single Turkish barber, and this is the danger, isn't it?
Nor do I think that.
Okay, but let me say this, if I may. This is the danger that we say, well, these are all this, these are all that. That's the tone of the narrative here. And I don't like it because it's not based
You might like it because for very obvious reasons.
And I think if you're going around maligning a community and saying they're Turkish, I don't think...
Well, many of them are. It's like the grooming gang scandal back in the day when people said... Do you not understand the basics of how interviews work?
Well, you interrupted me to say many of them are before I'd finished. And I understand the basics of interviews, that you let the person you're interviewing answer. And I said,
not ranting on, though, like you are.
Well, it takes one to know one here. And I think
Goodbye. Goodbye. Honestly. Let's move on to possibly a more sensible guest. Andrew Wallis is Chief Executive of the anti-modern slavery charity Unseen. Now, Andrew, very good evening. Your charity would not exist unless there were problems in these types of businesses, would it?
Correct. And let's hope we can have a more sort of nuanced conversation. And I think the problem I've got with sort of grandstanding statements on either side of the argument is this is nuanced, this is complex. Yes, there's organised criminality, but there's also modern slavery. We know in the UK at any one time there are about 130,000 victims. The socio-economic cost of that to the UK is about £60 billion a year, so that's 2% of GDP. And where do we find victims? Yes, we find them in barbershops, but we find them in care homes, in hotels, on construction sites, on farms, in distribution centres, in delivery drivers, nail bars, car washes, restaurants, takeaways, on and on and on. And is driven by a demand for both cheap goods, services and labour. But also it is vulnerable people that are being exploited for their labour in order that they can be extracted for the money that they can earn.
I just had a text from someone saying on his local high street there are 14 different barbershops. Now, this is in Plymouth, so I'm taking his word for the fact that that's correct. There are all sorts of these types of businesses springing up everywhere. Now, if there was really such a demand for them, okay, but as we know that they're very often empty. Is it reasonable of people to be suspicious?
Yes, it is. But I think what we've got to do is when we investigate this, we have to say, are these people deliberately working illegally? That's one offence. Are these people coerced and forced to work in that situation? That is the offence of modern slavery, and they're not free to leave that situation. And you're right. We are seeing, currently it's Turkish barbershops that are to the fore. A few years ago it was nail bars. You've mentioned car washes. None of those have gone away around that. And, for us as Unseen, we run the national helpline for this on 08000 121 700. If people have got concerns, then phone the helpline so that we can take that information and then work with law enforcement in order to investigate what is actually going on there. And you're right, there are circumstances in which we have modern slavery offences, we also have money laundering offences, and we have more linked businesses that are, raising huge amounts of money into the illicit economy.
What should be done about it? Because obviously the law enforcement authorities, they clearly suspect that people are up to no good in many of these businesses. We had all of these raids last October. But what more could they do?
Well, sadly, we're celebrating this year, last year, the 10th anniversary of the Modern Slavery Act. And post that, we had a national task force. It meant then that police forces were tasked with saying that modern slavery is a serious crime and it needs to be investigated. But sadly, in the intervening decade, we've seen that focus drop down. And yet we see the numbers of people being identified increasing about between 15 and 20% year on year. So we do need a renewed effort by policing to focus on these crimes. There are victims that are involved, and we need leadership from the government. And unfortunately today they've announced that what was called the Modern Slavery and Organised Immigration Crime Unit, they're dropping the focus on modern slavery and they're just focusing on organised immigration crime.
Why would they do that?
Because I think you'll have to ask the government, because, this is a £60 billion problem that we're dealing with. That there are victims that are in situations that they're not free to leave, that they are coerced, they're often suffering violence, they're often being forced to work against their will, they've been often tricked into that situation because they're in a vulnerable state. And let's not forget, this isn't a problem of other nationalities as well. UK nationals are caught in this. Just last week, just up the road from me in Gloucester, and I'm based in Bristol, a case concluded where a British national had been held in a situation of slavery for 20 years. And so we have to recognise that modern slavery is no respecter of race or creed or nationality. It looks for vulnerable people to prey on in order to make money off their backs.
Thank you very much indeed. That's Andrew Wallis, Chief Executive of the anti-modern slavery charity Unseen. I think another aspect of this is the fact that we know that our high streets have been in decline for many years. I don't think it's necessarily any government is able to take one single measure to reverse that decline. But when you have high streets that are just full of these barber shops, nail bars, all sorts of different, like betting shops, estate agents, they become less attractive for people to visit. And I wonder what you think can be done to reverse that trend.